Hello, everyone. This is John from Coins, RPGs, and more. And today I have a quick video to go over a few things that just arrived in the mail. I picked them up when I got home from work, and I'm a little excited about them, so let's talk about them really quick. First, I got a copy of the Tome of Adventure design. I have a copy of this that's in hardback from the first printing of it that I really enjoy. It's a fantastic book that will help any GM who needs a little inspiration in designing an adventure. It has everything from lots of tables and charts to help you pick out an evocative name, to it'll help you design the rooms, design what's inside the rooms, all based on dice rolls. It's just a massive book full of charts and ideas that will cover every aspect of your adventure, from the name to the theme to what's in there to what is stored within this little room, any little room or inside a container. It is fantastic. If you're ever not sure what to get, what to do for a dungeon, and you've got some time to sit there and roll some dice and take notes, this book, I love it. Now I have the current edition of it in softback, so I'm a happy camper. All right, what's the next thing that arrived? The next thing that arrived is a softback copy of the Swords and Wizardry core rules. I am a big Swords and Wizardry fan. I've been a fan of theirs for a long time. Most of what I use is Swords and Wizardry Continual Light right now. That's because I'm really enjoying the light games and what they bring to the table. But I still love Swords and Wizardry. Swords and Wizardry Complete is the game that I have on my shelf that I teach to a lot of people. That I have taught to a lot of people in the past. And I've run campaigns with it. It's fun. It's still pretty light without being as light as Swords and Wizardry Continual Light. So if you are looking for a game that is lighter in rules than, say, 5th edition D&D, but you don't quite want to go the full gamut of all weapons do d6 damage plus or minus 1, and classes are only the basic 3. If you want a bit more to it than that, then Swords and Wizardry is a great option. Swords and Wizardry Complete is fantastic. Can't say enough good things about that game. It's not perfect, but it's great. Swords and Wizardry Core, I haven't gone through this all of this yet. So I'll do a separate video on that eventually. But I'm happy to finally have a copy in print instead of a PDF. So that was another cool find from my mailbox today. But the real piece, the thing we're really going to talk about today, is Knave. This little cardstock thing that I just got is the game system's called Knave. It is old school role playing, and it is 16 pages long in a digest size, and it's an entire role playing system minus a bestiary. It doesn't have a bestiary, but we'll get into that. I've never read Knave before. I took it out of the box, and in 5 minutes, I had read the majority of the rules, and I simply said to myself, this is awesome. I didn't have much to say about it ahead of time. I didn't do a lot of research on this system when I bought it. I just kind of said, yeah, this looks cool. Let's, send me, I bought a copy off of in eBay, a lot that had these other books in it, because I mostly wanted the other books, especially the Swords and Wizardry core rules. And I thought, Dave, well, that could be fun. I mean, I'll look at that. I read it, and now I'm going, dang, I kind of want to use this for the next bout of a couple of sessions of solo games that I run. I think I might do that. We'll see. There's a few other systems I want to look at too, and maybe I'll do it. Maybe we'll talk about that. But anyway, let's talk about Knave real quick. So it's all on cardstock. It's 16 pages long, and it's all stapled together. Let's talk about what it does do. Excuse me. It's after midnight. I'm tired. My apologies. Let's talk about what it does do. And it still has all the same elements that you're used to in a role-playing game. Here's the character sheet. You've still got the 6 ability scores. You've still got, all your usual stuff here. What looks really different is here, and I'll go over what that is. That's your equipment. Equipment is covered in slots. So each item that you purchase takes up a slot in your inventory. And so you actually fill it in within that slot. And this tells you how many items you're able to carry is based on your Constitution score or Constitution defense. Anyway, so character creation is pretty straightforward, even more straightforward in some ways than Swords and Wizardry Continual Light. That is because there's one thing that is odd about it. It's something that is not what I expected. It is straightforward in a sense, but it's something that is unexpectedly done. When you're rolling your ability scores, you roll 3d6 or 3 6-sided dice, and you roll them in order. But you only keep the lowest one. The other 2 don't matter. The lowest die, that die becomes your bonus to that ability score. And then you add 10 to that, and that becomes your defense for that ability score. And that's it. So the only real reason why you are rolling 3 6-sided dice at this point is to get sort of, it's not like a bell curve. You're not getting a bell curve, but you're getting a pool of dice with which to choose from. So you pick, the lowest one. You could actually, if you were in a bit of a rush or something, I would imagine that you could make an argument of just rolling 6 dice and just running with that. But then if you did that, you probably end up with one ability score that had a bonus of 6, because you roll 6 dice and you get some. So I guess I can kind of see that. It guarantees the numbers stay low. It'll guarantee your numbers will be low. It's different. It's straightforward. I get it, but it's the one thing that I've read so far that kind of makes me go, I'm not sure that players would like that. But that's okay. I'll have to try it. I'll see if I like it. Anyway, so every player is going to start with 2 days of rations and a weapon of their choice. Cool. Straightforward. Basic. There's no classes in this game. I thought that was interesting. Every character is considered a knave. Everyone's, basically a ne'er-do-well. Why? Because people who are well-adjusted members of society tend to not go on adventures. They tend to stay where they're at. They get a job, they're going to work their job. If you are an adventurer, that means that something happened in your life that isn't normal. And you're not the average Joe or Jane. So I kind of get that. The idea of everyone being a knave. What's interesting, what they do is they say that basically your character, what they can and can't do is defined by the items that they choose to equip themselves with. This has positives and negatives. The positive is if you're the kind of player who wants to not be pigeonholed. Like, I want to be able to cast a fireball one session and bust out my rapier the next and not be penalized for doing that. Knave is right up your alley at that point, because you can you can keep the books for spells that you like, so you have those spells available to cast, while also wearing armor and using your weapons. There's nothing in here that stops you from doing both. Now, armor tends to take up a lot of slots in your equipment, so if you are being a fully armed and armored person, you're going to have fewer spells that you can use. And I'll get into that in a moment when I go over magic. So I kind of like this classless way of doing things, because it makes sure that you are paying attention to what you want your character to do, not who they are, which puts it in a fun focus, I think. The bad thing about it is that there's no special abilities. There's no I'm a fighter, so therefore I get to attack X number of times per round kind of thing. It's everything is based off of what equipment you're carrying, and you can carry anything you want, which means that you're at no point are you going to be creating a character who is unable to do something. You're always able to do it. You're always able. All you have to do is pick up the right piece of equipment, and suddenly your character knows how to use it. So it could kind of mess with some people's story concepts, because you could easily have a powerful warrior who one day picks up a book for the lightning bolt spell, and they're 7th level, and they suddenly can cast lightning bolt because they have that spell. If that's going to bother you, if that idea of this character being able to just pick up a book, now obviously they're not just going to pick it up. To get a lightning bolt spell is going to require going on an adventure. It's going to require defeating a mage who has a spell of lightning bolt. So in that sense, your character is still earning it. It's not like they get it for free. So it still does tie into a story, or it can if you're running that kind of a game. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about Knave. But so that's kind of where character creation is going. The other thing that character creation does is it's a lot of rolling. Instead of rolling for abilities, you're still rolling for abilities, but instead of a bunch of other stuff, you're rolling on. There's a table of there's traits. So you can select or roll for your character's physique, their face, what their face looks like, their skin. So markings on their skin, like their skin is pierced, their skin is sallow, their skin is tanned, or their skin is covered in makeup. Okay, so you can translate those in whatever way you want. They're just keywords, but you could roll on those keywords. Your hair. What's your character's hair like? You can use a keywords to figure out what kind of clothing do they wear. Do they wear antique clothing, or do they wear oversized clothing? Interesting. It's interesting. What's their virtue? What's their vice? What's their speech pattern? If you can decide on that, or you can roll for it, and you're covered. You get a one-word background for your character. Your character is an outlaw, and then you and the DM can decide whatever that means. It's really a keyword for inspiration for story, not for rules. Like, just because you're an outlaw doesn't mean you're going to get like D6 extra gold pieces and a secret map in the wilderness to where your hideout is or something like that. You don't get those automatically. Now you can ask your DM for those sorts of things, but that's not baked into the rules, which I kind of like. I don't really. I like the idea of the backgrounds that 5th edition used. I think they had a great idea, but I think in some cases they put too much onto the background to the point where I've known players who will background shop for skills and abilities that they want without paying attention to the background itself and what that means. And they'll cherry pick what they want in order to make a build for their character. I put that in air quotes. Without paying attention to the role-playing aspect of things, or they want to create a character that's a certain way, but the background that best meshes with the concept that they're going with doesn't have the abilities that they want, and so they pick a different background, but they want to say, oh, but it's going to be like this anyway, and I don't have any issue necessarily with that when I'm playing 5th edition, but it seems a bit disingenuous. It seems a bit odd to me to do that on purpose. With something like Knave, where it's a key word and there's no rules attached to it, well, then it's just story. And story is what we're here for. At least that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the game. I'm here to roll dice. I'm here to roll dice and tell a story. So I like that about it. It also has misfortunes. You can select a one-word misfortune for your character. Let's say, and this is, in my mind, like your background could be cook. And then your misfortune is exiled. What that means to me is your character is trained as a cook. Your character has worked as a cook for years. Maybe that's what they were trained at from, a young age. And their misfortune is what has propelled them into the adventuring life. So they were exiled. Why were they exiled? What happened? Did they do something for real? Were they accused wrongly of something? Those questions, when answered, provide the oomph to your character's background that tells me why they're an adventurer. And this Knave, this system, is providing all of that with just a bunch of D20 rolls or one-word descriptive things. It is the epitome of the minimalistic role-playing concept for backgrounds. I really enjoy it. And of course, there's alignment, which is law, neutral, or chaos. That's the last one you roll on for your traits. I'm not going to get into the whole good and evil dichotomy of alignment. I have mixed feelings on it. Sometimes I really want to play a game that's just, we're the good guys, we're the big darn heroes, and we are fighting the evil monsters. So all hail the conquering heroes. There's no shades of gray. It's all comic book colors, 16-bit colors if you want to go by Nintendo stuff. It's just simple, good, clean fun. Those are awesome. And there are days when I'm like, the world is made out of shades of gray, and we all need to, understand the various ways that humankind has developed. And let's make this role-playing game a philosophical journey into the evolution of the psyche of man, and what would modern man do when thrust into such situations by which he has no ken to understand? Or whatever pretentious BS, I decided to throw at myself that day. So good and evil, they have their place. They have their place in the game. I know there's a lot of people that really don't like them. I see that they have a place, and I think it depends on the group you're playing with. If so, I'm not going to tell you good and evil is you never use it. I think that it has a very different thing. But the law versus chaos dynamic is one that I can really get behind, because law stands for law, law and order. Law, the thing which allows us to build cities, to create nations, to have an organization to our lives, which, in our Western society, we are a society of laws, because everything is governed by laws, and we have lawyers whose entire job is to use, or in some cases abuse, the laws in order to get certain outcomes. And this is not to make fun of lawyers; it's their job. And I know some people that are very good at it, and I wish them all nothing but the best. The idea being, we are a society of laws, so we would be a lawful society. Pretty much every major country on our planet is a lawful society because we use those laws in order to govern our own lives, to try to build something better. That's the hope, the desire of law, to make something better for future generations. And in D&D terms, law is that's your city folks. And in most cases, it's going to be your country folks too. It's going to be any person who believes in creating and maintaining a standard of living, of acknowledging and standing by your duties and your responsibilities in life, and taking care of those who depend upon you, and being happy to do so, being willing to make sacrifices in order to fulfill your duties and your obligations. Those are all things that are lawful. Now, you don't have to be a good person to do all those things. You can be a terrible person with ideas that make your friends and family squirm. But as long as you are lawful, you're still lawful, and you're still working for the betterment of society at large. Whereas if you are a person who believes in tearing down that, in chaos, in anarchy, in let's make sure that the individual is more important than the group in every way, then you're following chaos. And chaos can be really kind of neat. You can have villages, you can have societies based on chaos. They're not going to be organized. They're not going to have massive philanthropic stuff going around and working with people, because by their very nature, they hate large, overarching organizations that are going to seek to impose order upon their lives. They may have smaller organizations that are pretty loose in order to try to do that stuff. So it's not to say that someone who lives in a chaotic culture is going to have, is not going to have like a religion. They're not going to have, all these things. They'll have all that. They won't be as tightly controlled. They won't have as many ceremonies that must be obeyed and things like that. So you can have a chaotic culture, and it can be filled with good people that really they want the best for themselves or for their neighbors, but they believe so firmly in the individual freedom that they would never try to impose their will upon their neighbors, unless some of them might actually. And if if it's truly a place of chaos, then as long as they have the strength to impose their will, no one can stop them. That's kind of where chaos tends to go. It tends to become survival of the fittest and the strongest, and that lasts until the fittest and the strongest decide that it's better for them to impose laws to make sure that they stay the fittest and the strongest, and so the young bucks coming up can't unseat them because, well, now we have laws to stop this. And that kind of tends to be the seed of how a chaotic culture turns into a lawful culture over time. You get a couple of generations of this, of each generation of the formerly chaotic people trying to cement their power to prevent themselves and their own children from being kicked out of their position of privilege, because they use their strength to get there, and now they're using their strength to maintain it. And if they can do that long enough, then it becomes just the law, and suddenly we have nobility. Yeah, I'm really diverging, I know. So anyway, that's alignment for Knave. I think it's cool. I think it covers a lot of ground with just 3 words and a couple of numbers so you can roll for dice. So you can do a lot with this. There's much to be done with very little words. I like it. Starting gear, you roll for the kind of armor you start with. That's cool. And, the armor is gambesons, brigandines, and chain armor. Oh my gosh! No one's trying to force leather armor down our throats! Yay! Leather armor, one of the most just strange, I want to call it anachronisms, so I'm not even sure that word's accurate. It's so odd because it doesn't actually exist. Like, it never existed, and yet it's everywhere in role-playing games and in movies and television shows. Everyone's got this, badass barbarians wearing leather armor. Oh, and I'm laughing all the way. Like, it just didn't exist. Yeah, I mean, cloth armor did. The gambeson existed. That existed for hundreds of years. Thousands of years if you want to go back far enough to... Sorry, I'm laughing. It's funny. It really is funny. Knave, thank you. You've made this this quasi armchair historian nerd dude very happy by just those 3 words. It's so silly. Anyway, helmets and shields. That's the other thing that I really enjoy about this is now RPGs always acknowledge the shield, but they never acknowledge the helmet. And that's how you get these weird things where, like they really support the cinematic idea of the brave hero decked out in plate armor, but they take their helmet off so you can see their face, and their hair is all sweaty and matted, and they're gotta rub that out of their eyes, and you just want to punch them because they left themselves open to be punched. Like, why would you ever take your helmet off in the middle of a battlefield? You dunce. Don't do that. Put on your darn helmet. And yet it hasn't been, never been in RPGs. It's always just assumed. And so here, there's actually a rule for if you wear your helmet, you get a +1 to your armor class. And what do we know about people who play RPGs? Well, if you tell me that there's something that gives me a +1 to my armor class, I'm going to use it. Now they're using their helmets. And I'm happy, and it's funny. All right. Dungeoneering Gear. For your character, you roll on this chart twice to get your first 2 pieces of Dungeoneering Gear. And then there's 2 other... there's General Gear 1 and General Gear 2, and you roll ones on each of those in order to select your items. That's cool. It gives you a good... Excuse me. Oof. It gives you a good selection of things to start with. Gets you into the game as quickly as possible. That's the other cool part about this is it, because it's so short, I mean, you could make a character in less time than it takes me to talk about it. And you're in the game, and that's it. That's all you need. From there, it has more lists of items. It lists all the items that have already been mentioned, plus a bunch more. Like there's other kinds of armor. It talks up to full plate armor. There's other weapons. There's things about, buying a ship and animals, different kinds of weapons, buying land transports, buying a building. But the interesting part about this all is Knave, because it's focused on the ne'er-do-wells, the knaves. Everything is in coppers. I'll say that again. All the prices are in copper pieces. Not a gold piece in sight. I kind of love it. A lot. Not gonna lie. And that is because gold in medieval societies was very rare. I mean, most people, the wealthy people, dealt in silver. For hundreds of years, gold was the thing reserved for like high nobility and kings and queens and priests of and priestesses and gods. That gold was the color for those things, and yet in your average D&D campaign, you got gold pieces coming out your ears if you play long enough. And it's always because the companies who make these, the authors, and I include myself in this when I'm doing my own games, like I'm guilty too. We always put things in gold pieces because then the numbers are smaller and it is easier to calculate, and gold just makes sense. And you do like one copper penny, or sorry, 10 coppers is one silver, and then 10 silvers is one gold, and the math is easy. But with Knave, they do everything in copper pieces, and so let's look at a padlock and a key is 20 copper coins. That's kind of cool, but how much copper do you start with? Well, we go into number 3 in character creation, which is roll 1d8. Oh, sorry, that's hit points. Sorry. Let's see. I'm reading real quick to see if I can find their starting gold. Huh. Well, I can't see it, so maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. You don't start out with any money. You just start out with your. Looks like you just start out with your starting gear and go with it. I'm just checking the time to make sure this video isn't going to be too terribly long. I kind of like that. I thought I had seen earlier, you would roll so much and get your starting funds, but I guess I just kind of assumed that because it's not there, which is fine. So let's leave that stuff behind for right now. Let's talk about the rules for playing the game. So item slots. We talked about item slots. Now, the number of slots that your character can have is equal to the defense value of your constitution. So let's say when you rolled for your constitution, you rolled a 6, a 5, and a 3. So your constitution bonus is now +3, and your constitution defense is 13, which means you can have 13 slots on your character sheet. And the slots for items are numbered 1 through 20. So, on your individual character sheet, you go up to slot 13 and make some kind of mark saying that's the end. Once you fill up that slot, then you can't fill up anymore. I wouldn't recommend crossing these out because you can actually increase your abilities. That's how your character gets better. So don't do anything drastic. Just mark it down. Anyway, because that's how you decide what your character can do by what equipment they carry, that's kind of important. So you keep track of that. Saving throws. A saving throw is done by rolling a d20 and then taking the bonus for the respective ability that you're rolling a saving throw for, adding it to the d20, and trying to roll 50 against 15 or higher. Okay. Not an easy roll. Not for any circumstances, especially if most of your ability scores, you're going to be lucky to have, a 3 in them. Some of you are going to have 2 and 1. That's going to be hard to make your saves at first. Now that's going to go up higher when you advance your character, but starting character is going to have a hard time. I'm okay with that. I'm actually okay with that. Again, there's no classes in this game. There's nothing but that's so how your character improves is tracked by how things like their ability scores and thus their abilities bonuses go up. So this works for me. There's a reaction table, which is pretty cool. It's right there, bam, right in front of the combat section. So we're checking reactions. We're learning about reactions before we learn about how to fight, and I kind of like that because it's more important. It's better for story. It's a very simple reaction table, straightforward. I don't really need to go through that. You guys can see it on your own. The combat is similar to the way we've always done it. I don't need to go into detail about how that is different. The one thing that is different is stunts. Stunts are kind of like feats in a sense, but that's something that you decide with your GM. So if you want to perform a stunt as one of your actions in a combat round, then you forego the chance to actually do damage to your opponent in order to perform the stunt. And then you make a roll, whatever roll the DM declares. And if you succeed in that roll, which is by versus save, you're saving versus your opponent's defense. If you succeed, then the stunt goes off. And you're able to do the one thing. The one thing could be, I want to disarm my opponent. Or it could be, I want to kick my opponent off the ledge. It could be, I want to stun them for a round. You could do a lot of different stuff. And if you succeed, it works. That requires the GM and the players to really be kind of in tune with each other. So be careful with it. Advantage in combat, it's straightforward. It's neat. Critical hits were neat. I remember. I'm trying to look at this. If you roll a natural 20, or the defender rolls a natural 1, then the defender's armor loses 1 from its quality. And if you reduce an item's quality to 0, like the armor in this case, then the armor is useless. But you can repair your armor back up to a higher quality. It's nice. It's nice. I like it. You can't make something of a higher quality than it was to start with, I don't think. But the idea of being able to repair an item and having it baked into the system, having item damage baked into the system in such a neat way, I approve. Morale, awesome. Healing, it's straightforward. It works. Monsters, what's neat about this is they have a formula written into here so that you can convert anything you want into a monster. You want to make a monster on the fly, you've got a formula for it. It's done. But they really designed Knave to work with any monster books that are OSR compatible, old school Renaissance compatible. And that's like, 90% of my monster books. So I don't need to buy any more monster books. I just have to pick out which ones I like and then use this formula to double check things, and I'm good. Bam! Awesome. Advancements based off of earning 1,000 experience points. Your characters, they can earn 150 XP for low risk stuff, 100 XP for moderate risk, and 200 XP for high risk activities. And then you can get whatever other bonuses you want if you want to give them extra experience for story completion and stuff. I mean, awesome. That's a straightforward. And when that happens, when you gain a level, they roll a number of d8s equal to their new level to find their new hit point maximum. So it's that's my favorite way of doing hit points. So I'm sold. And then if the result is less, then your hit points still go up by 1. So you still get something. It's not great, but you still get something. Okay. They also raise the defense and bonus scores of 3 of their abilities of their choice by 1. I like this. I like this a lot. It's a great way to continue to advance characters without, going through the whole I need a new ability in this round. I didn't get a new ability. It's wasted. It's not wasted. Stop being a jerk. Seriously. So the other part that I think is kind of neat, there's 2 magic systems in Knave, which I found fascinating because there's really only covered in 1, 2, 3 pages. Oh, 4. Sorry, there's 4 pages. 2 pages front and back, I guess, if you want to go technical. Anyway, the first one, take any spell list that you already have. And as long as your character is of a level equal to that spell's level, 0 through 9, they can cast that spell. As long as they have a book on them. Because every spell is keyed to a book. You don't have one big spell book that contains all of your spells. You have a library of books, and each book contains one of the spells you are able to cast. And I like this system. I like this concept because it means that your wizard is not going to be running around carrying all their spells all at the same time. They're going to have to start picking and choosing which spells they take on adventures, which means you're going to have to do something to either get rid of the spells that they no longer want to use, which could make for interesting adventures, or they have to find a way to store the spells they no longer use, which means that they're investing in a home. They're investing in a place that they can lock up safe and tight. Now, you might be nice as a GM and give them some kind of extra dimensional space that they can store their books in. I think that's a bit of a cop-out, but if you're trying to do a high fantasy adventure and you don't want people to worry about that sort of thing, I can see you give them like Mary Poppins' carpet bag and let them keep all their books in there when they're not actively adventuring. But they can they can only exchange books when they have time for that. But doing that kind of negates the whole item slot concept that Knave has, and it's really high magic. I'd be very careful about applying that kind of solution. Frankly, I'd recommend you just keep playing it as it's intended and make people swap stuff out. So that's neat. And it's also neat because it doesn't make any differentiation between arcane or divine spells. The only differentiation is the spell's level. So it gives the DM a lot of control over what spells they make available. You can have a character whose magic is magic. Magic is a toolbox, and they can collect both what we would think of as traditionally divine and arcane spells, both types. And as long as they have the book for each one, then they're good to go. And there's no argument about how magic works. Obviously, if you're playing Knave, then magic works off of books. Now, if you want to do something like magic works off of tattoos instead, I guess you could do that, as long as it is something that takes up a inventory slot. So you can't say, well, I got 3 tattoos put on me, but that doesn't take up my inventory slots because they're tattoos and they don't carry weight. And no, you're not getting around it that way. If that's your argument, then the tattoos are now just suggestions, and you have to carry books again. This system being done the way it is bakes that concept into the setting, that magic is based on written word, it is based on books, and if you want to use the spell, you have to have the book. So I like that. The next one, it's the same, except what they've done is they have taken 100 spells. None of them have a level. And your character could learn any of those spells. So theoretically, you could roll 3 100-sided dice, or percentile dice, and get like three books to start with for your character, or whatever number you want, and so randomly select your spells. And any book that your character comes across is going to be useful, because a lot of these books, the spell's abilities scale depending on what level your character is. So therefore, and as long as you have that book in your possession, then you can cast that spell once per day. I'm sold. Like, I think it's neat. The other thing I think is neat about this, though, is I've been looking through all these spells, these 100 different spells, and there's not a lot of damage-dealing spells. There's a lot of manipulation spells. There's a lot of spells that change the environment. There's a lot of spells that give you abilities that you wouldn't otherwise have. But there's no like lightning bolts and fireballs and all this kind of stuff. It devolves to a more a sort of a subtle magic in a sense, but a less flashy magic. It's not like it is less powerful, because one of them is Astral Prison is number 5. Astral Prison. An object is frozen in time and space within an invulnerable crystal shell. Period. Now, the rules do state that only lasts for approximately your level times 10 minutes. All spells that have a duration only last that long. So if you wanted to be, a nice GM, you could do that. And therefore, if your NPCs have successfully cast that spell upon one of your player characters, they have a way to get out of it. But that's a really powerful spell, and it can be really flashy, but at the same time, it's not a fireball. And anytime I can present spells to wizards that aren't fireballs or lightning bolts or eldritch blasts or whatnot, and make them think of magic as a toolbox instead of a sledgehammer always, I'm happy. And I'm very happy with this spell list. I'm excited about it. And that's pretty much the whole thing. We've talked about the entirety of Knave. You could get a character up and running in far less time than it took me to tell you about this system. So I'm a fan. I'm probably going to do something with this relatively soon. And I look forward to it. I have a few other systems I'm also looking into as potentials for a solo session. I'm also looking into doing something for the Cypher system, because I think that one might be fun to do solos in. But then there's also one other system, something a little older, that's been in my bookshelf for a little while. The Prince Valiant storytelling game is a role-playing game that I quite enjoy because of its concepts that it has. And I might do a solo run of that one as well. The only problem with that is it's not currently in print. It's really hard for people to find. And I feel a little bad about promoting a system that you then can't find, especially to my, my colleagues and viewers that might be visually impaired. So not sure about that. Oh, the visual impairment index for Knave. Okay. There's no art in the Book of Knave. So nothing to get confused about. Everything is done via well-defined paragraphs or bullet points. Easy to follow. The only downside, the only bad thing about Knave is they're really in love with this, the font that they use for their headers. This old-time medieval themed font. They love it. It's everywhere. It's not nearly as jarring and weird as, say, Morkborg, or more. I can't pronounce Morkborg. I can't pronounce it properly. Anyway, it's not nearly as crazy as trying to get around that game. So don't worry about it. But it took a little getting used to. So be careful with that. Now, a lot of the stuff is laid out really well. It's very clean. It's very clear. You got double columns where you need them. If you can see all this, I'm trying not to give away too much because I don't want people to think I'm just going to put the whole thing up on a video. But the item lists are very clear and concise, well laid out. This is really a well laid out little pamphlet. And I could see printing this up on regular sized paper and suddenly it's an even larger print than it is now. It's already in pretty large sized print. I can read this just fine with my glasses. Now my vision is 2200 with my glasses on, and I'm able to read this just fine. So if your vision is only slightly limited, you're not going to have a problem. If your vision is more limited than mine, then you might want to consider buying the PDF of Knave and then printing it out on regular sized paper and seeing if that works for you. But there's really no, aside from those there's really no issues with size as far as this goes. There's no issues with layout. There's no weird background images. It's all black and white, so anyone who's got color blindness, you're just dealing in shades of gray already. It's designed that way. Don't even fuss on it. It's not going to affect you. At least it shouldn't. Not to my knowledge anyway. If I'm wrong and you guys want to be like, John, you're really leading us badly, you tell me, okay? I appreciate it. I'm not a guru here. I just share what I know. If I don't know it, I got to learn it, right? That's where we start. Character sheet, I'd make my own personally. Not that I don't like this character sheet. I don't like all this tiny text next to each of the abilities. They're telling you what you can use the abilities for. Like it makes sense to have it there if you've got someone who's never played before. And if I'd probably print this up on regular sized paper and then most people would be fine. But if I was to do this for people that already know how to role play, I'd do a sheet that just cuts all that out because it's not necessary. Anyway, that's my mail call for today, and that is Knave, as well as the other two books that I got. They're really fun. I hope you all enjoyed this video. It's a bit longer than my usual. If that was too long, let me know, and I'll try to make them shorter from now on. But I thought I'd try a longer format, give myself a bit more room to kind of talk to everyone about how I feel about things. I hope you didn't mind my tangents, but I can turn those into longer videos or more specialized videos on how I feel about alignment in games. We can talk about that. Just let me know what you'd like to explore a bit more of and get my perspective on, and I'll be happy to share. I hope you all have a wonderful time. Thank you very much for stopping by. Peace be with you.